It took me months and months to find all the single shadows I needed to dupe my favorite eyeshadow palette, but I believe I've finally done it. I stuck to two main, more widely available brands, so if you wanted to go ahead and dupe this yourself, you most likely could. So I bought shades from ColourPop and from MAC Cosmetics. If you missed my previous video, this is the palette we are duping, the Too Faced Boudoir Eyes eyeshadow palette. So let's jump into the single shadows. So starting off with our top row, I'd say In the Buff and Fuzzy Handcuffs, which are the shades from the original palette, I was able to get pretty close with MAC. So for that third shade on the top row, Voulez-Vous, I was able to get kind of sort of like the undertone, but the shade from MAC is way too pigmented and dark, and it's not shimmery. So this one wasn't a great fit. I feel like out of the whole palette, Voulez-Vous is the hardest shade to match. On our second row for Satin Sheets, I went ahead and picked up Naked Lunch from MAC, and that was a pretty close shade match. Now for my favorite shade, Sugar Walls, the middlemost shade in the palette, I picked up the shade Satin Taupe from MAC, and while online, I believe like discussion boards had this as a really, really close dupe, swatched out, the lightness wasn't quite there, but I could see the undertones. Like in person, these undertones looked very, very similar. The last shade in the middle row was pretty spot on in terms of like gray, but one was a warm gray, one was a cool gray. After swatching and layering a couple of the shades, I got an almost exact match for Birthday Suit, which is the last shade on the bottom left. I was not able to find a MAC dupe for Lap Dance, so we are skipping that one. And then for French Tickler, the last black shade that had shimmer in it, we just had Carbon from MAC, which is just plain matte black. Which I don't know what the heck is going on with our current black shades, but this black shade from Too Faced 10 years ago swatched better than MAC. I don't know what the heck was going on there. And switching over to ColourPop now. For the first row of shades, well, for the first two shades, I was able to get, those are pretty easy to kind of dupe. Fuzzy Handcuffs and In the Buff, just the cream, and then kind of like a peachy kind of shade that got really, really close. I was not able to find a Voulez-Vous, that purpley shade. Like I said, I think it's the hardest one to match. I was not able to find anything in ColourPop's repertoire that would work. Now for Satin Sheets, I feel like the MAC one was a lot closer. The one from ColourPop was very, very pink. Moving to Sugar Walls, I feel like I got a much closer dupe out of the ColourPop shade, and that ColourPop shade is Snake Eyes. So I feel like Snake Eyes, that single shade, is pretty close, especially if you layer it with the Satin Sheets dupe. You get pretty close to the original shade. Ran into the same problem with the Garter Belt. Very close in tone, but the warmth, I'm getting warm undertones in all of these singles that I'm picking up. And for our last row, Birthday Suit, I got an almost exact dupe by layering the Garter Belt dupe and the dupe that I found for Birthday Suit, which was the shade Ringer. The closest shade I could find for Lap Dance was, again, it didn't have that deep, cool gray underneath it. It also didn't swatch as well. I don't know why this 10-year-old Too Faced palette is still swatching this amazingly, but oh, I digress. And then I did find a decent dupe for French Tickler. The only difference is instead of gold speckles, in the ColourPop dupe, we have pink speckles. And to be quite frank, I kind of like the ColourPop shade here better. So overall, my dream dupe palette would be a mix of both of these ColourPop and MAC shades. So come back for my next video to see that palette.